Doctors could be on the brink of a breakthrough.
Migraines.
How to control them.
Tame a migraine.
A severe migraine.
Throbbing, recurring headaches.
Given all the noise, navigating the migraine experience can be confusing and scary, but you do not have to do it alone. Welcome to the Migraine Guy Podcast, the official podcast of themigraineguy.com and theheadachereview.com. Now, here's your host.
What is up, Migraine Podians? It is Kevin here, the Migraine Guy, bringing you another episode of the Migraine Guy podcast. As usual, if this is your first time checking out the pod, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you are listening on. That way you'll be alerted when I update every episode, usually on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Additionally, if you are listening on iTunes, I would really appreciate a 5-star review with some kind comments explaining why you like the pod. That helps other people with similar interests to you find the podcast. And as we know, there are millions and millions of migraine sufferers out there, so hopefully they can find this podcast and be connected with the resources and outlets that I'm connected with, and then they can be more connected with the migraine community, because migraine pain can be very isolating, and we want to pull every single migraine sufferer out of whatever isolation they are in and into community. Not that that's going to cure their migraines, but it will make the burden a little easier to bear. Additionally, this week's episode is brought to you by our Patreon subscribers. Got a few Patreon subscribers going on, and I want to give them a special shout out because I do appreciate the amount of money that they do send to us to help keep this podcast going, cover resources like microphone and software upgrades, as well as the web hosting needed to host a podcast like that. So if you want to become a Patreon member, you want to directly contribute to the Migraine Guy, you can do that at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/the Migraine Guy and become a patron. All right. Well, it's been a few weeks since we've done a normal podcast broken down into segments, so that's what we're going to do this week. If you're new to the pod, I'm going to start off with a little bit about how my migraine life has been going. Then we'll hop into some news, some tips, and a listener question, comment, or story. So the last few weeks of my migraine life has been a little weird. I've had my normal kind of 3 to 5 level pain migraines at about the normal frequency that I get them, basically every other day. Since I'm at the chronic level, I get about 15 to 20 a month. But I've been doing a lot of physical work lately, building a deck, shed, redoing some stuff for friends, and something about the physical activity has helped keep my migraines. Maybe just my attention is so focused on my tasks, and I don't want to screw them up and be embarrassed, that I am just not noticing that the kind of normal things that I would pick up on if I was, say, at home or at school or trying to read, the kind of migraine pain could overwhelm that amount of attention. But for whatever reason, I'm not complaining that my migraine pain, even though it's been pretty normal, has not been as regular throughout the day, I guess is probably the better way to describe it. I'm still getting the same amount of migraines, but instead of having the, level 3 to 5 pain for maybe 6 or 7 hours a day, it's maybe 2 to 3. So that has been a welcome reduction. The downside is yesterday, I'm recording this on Thursday the 4th, so yesterday the 3rd, I have said numerous times that lack of sleep and inconsistent sleep is probably my biggest migraine trigger, but I haven't been getting bad sleep or inconsistent sleep the last few weeks. It's been very, very nice, and that's without taking the tizanidine every night before bed, since I'm on an off cycle right now. So I woke up yesterday probably about 2 in the morning after going to bed at about 11 or 11:30 and just couldn't fall back asleep, and so I was up. And within a couple hours, my head was pretty foggy. I was starting to feel some jaw tightness, some of the normal indicators that I'm about to get a migraine. And so I tried to get ahead of it, and I popped a sumatriptan. I guzzled a bunch of water. I made sure that I had eaten some stuff. I tried to lay down to take a little bit of a nap, but woke up shortly after because I just couldn't sleep. And then it started up. The pain started at a 2, then a 3, then a 4 within an hour. And then within the next couple hours, it was at about a level 7, which isn't abnormal. About once or twice a month I'll get a really, really debilitating migraine. But the weird thing was, and I'm assuming this is the triptan's fault because this is a fairly normal occurrence, a normal side effect with sumatriptan and other triptans, was nerve tingling. I started noticing that my jaw and my arms were tingling more so than they ever have before. And I don't know if this is just because I've been using triptans for a while, and so originally they weren't really helpful, and then recently they've become a little more helpful, but yesterday it wasn't helpful, and I got some nerve tingling. And so it was just a weird. It is just a weird evolution of my body's response to triptans. So yesterday was kind of shot. I had a bunch of plans I needed to do. It's been really rainy around here in Nebraska, and yesterday was actually clear and sunny. It even got up to 90 degrees, even though it's only been about 60 on average for the last couple weeks. So I was really hoping to knock out a couple final tasks that I needed to do outdoors, and I just couldn't. The day was shot. The morning was migraine filled. Then the afternoon I fell asleep for a couple hours, which was nice because I was very tired from waking up so early. And then the migraine finally was gone by about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. But by about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I can't really start doing a ton of tasks. Plus, you're in that kind of migraine hangover phase where things are kind of groggy. You feel like maybe you got hit in the head, and you're just kind of not dizzy, but you can't really put 2 words together to form a sentence. And so I ended up just mowing the lawn, folding some laundry, taking out the trash, trying to do some pretty minimal tasks, things I didn't really have to think too critically about or have my head on straight for. So yesterday was kind of shot, kind of a bummer. But other than that, things are going pretty normal. I'm starting back up on the tizanidine for sleep. I took some last night just because I wanted to make sure I would get some good sleep after getting poor sleep the night before, and woke up, fairly bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as I get. I'm not really a morning person, but I feel as good as I normally do, so that's nice. But yesterday, it was kind of a wash. So that's the way it is when you get migraines, and I'm sure that you can relate. We're going to hop into some migraine news now, but I want to let you know that if you want more updates from the Migraine Guy, you can go ahead and follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook at the Migraine Guy Facebook page, YouTube, .com/The Migraine Guy is our YouTube channel, Twitter.com/The Migraine Guy, and Instagram.com/The Migraine Guy are where we are most active online. So if you want to follow me on any of those platforms, please feel free to do so. And let's hop into some migraine news. We've got some good stuff this week. Since we've been a little inconsistent with the podcast in terms of getting it out every week or every other week, there's been a lot of good news to kind of accumulate. So I'm going to sift through some of it today. Let's get to it. All right, this week's bit of migraine news comes to us on the heels of the Aimovig release a few months ago, the new CGRP med offered by Novartis Amgen, the pharmaceutical company that created the Aimovig. Now there is another CGRP med that has been approved by the FDA for use at preventing migraines. The pharmaceutical company that has created it is Eli Lilly, Eli Lilly. And they've taken it in the form of a monthly injection that patients can administer to themselves at home. So very similar to the Aimovig product. Additionally, the Aimovig drug made by Amgen Novartis comes in at roughly $575 a month, or if you do that per year, it's about $6,900, and that's going to be the same for this medication. So we have, if you're new to the CGRP meds, if this is new, basically there's a receptor, a peptide receptor in your body, and it has been highly correlated with migraines. Researchers have noted that over the past years, and so the CGRP meds work in one of 2 ways. Some of the CGRP meds that are out right now work at binding to the peptides. That way they can't get into the receptor, and other ones affect the receptors themselves. Either way, the upshot is that the receptors can't interact with the peptides, which results in them not being activated. And so this has been shown in the studies that they've published to on the whole, reduce migraine frequency per month. For some people, it's very, very dramatic drop. It's a very, very dramatic drop, maybe even life-changing for them. And for other people, they don't really notice a huge difference, or if they do, it's extremely minimal. But now there is a third one on the market from from Eli Lilly here. There's also another one, Teva's, is a company that we talked about a few weeks ago on the podcast, and they have a medication, a CGRP called Ajovy, which is also going to be in the same price range, both per month and per year. So now we've got 3 CGRP medications that have been fully approved or basically approved by the FDA in the United States for migraine prevention. And this is, it's both good and bad. I put out a little survey on the Migraine Guy Facebook page just to hear back from people who have started taking at least Aimovig, since that was the first one out a few months ago, and that was the one that was getting a lot of news coverage, if it had been a dramatic help or not. And of course, this isn't a scientific study. It's not taking all of the people who have been prescribed Aimovig and hearing their stories about it. But from the people who responded, the CGRP meds, though for some people, as I said, are life-changing, they haven't really been as breakthrough as we were promised. And if you had read the studies behind the Aimovig trials and some of the other CGRP meds that were in the works when Aimovig was approved, that's really the appropriate amount of hope that really should have been in there. A lot of the doctors who had been talking about the CGRP meds were really, evangelizing it. They were promoting it like it was like it was going to be the drug for migraine sufferers. But lots of people who've been on the medication for 2 or 3 months now, and granted, they're probably going to need to be on it much longer in order to get a full trial, but the people who have been on it for 2 or 3 months so far have not noticed, the ones that responded to me anyway, have not noticed a huge decrease in their migraine frequency. As I said, there are some people, and there are some Facebook groups, for example, that you could go to where they talk specifically about their experience with it, and they're devoted to just talking about CGRP meds and their migraines. If you want more information, feel free to check those out. But a lot of those people are, again, saying the exact same thing, that they aren't seeing a huge reduction, and so they're a little skeptical whether or not this is ultimately going to be worth the money, because companies like Amgen, Novartis have coupons where you can get the first 2 or 3 months of the CGRP med for free, and then after that, hopefully your insurance will feel better about being able to cover at least some of the cost associated with the meds, since they are so expensive for the average consumer. And so it's good to see that there's another medication coming to market, but it's another medication in the exact same way that the other medications work. Sorry, that was a bad sentence. This is just basically another medication in a long line of medications that do basically the same thing. And so if we get 3 or 4 different medications on the market that do the same thing but don't overall help most migraine sufferers, it's going to be a very sad day for migraine sufferers, especially since this is, these CGRP meds are the first medications designed specifically for migraine sufferers. And so if they turn out to not really be that effective for most migraine sufferers, it's going to be a real kick in the pants for us. Let's see. Is there anything else to say about this? They have Eli Lilly has a patient support program that you can check out. I will put that in the show notes. The website's pretty easy to remember. It's just lillycares.com, Lilly cares.com. And the program here does have some ways in which you can get free medications. And so, of course, if you have, limited insurance, not great insurance, or your insurance is just not covering the CGRP meds yet, but you really want to try it, you and your doctor really want to try it, you can go to that website in order to find the coupons, sign up for the program. That way you can at least get a few months free to try the medication, and hopefully then be able to tell your insurance that it is helping, and then you can get it covered by your insurance. As we know, insurance companies don't like to cover new medications because they're new medications. They like to cover the things that have a longer history, a longer track record, and basically the trademarks have run out, so they can cover the generic versions, which are only a few bucks for them to cover, rather than these new medications, which have hundreds of dollars as their price tag. So that being said, there are some new medications that are being approved, or in trial period for the FDA, that aren't CGRP. There's some new triptans that are going to come out, and there are a couple other medications that are in the works. So it's not that all pharmaceutical companies have put their eggs in one basket in terms of just focusing on CGRP. But now that we've got this third CGRP medication that's out, that's in the same price range and does basically the same thing in terms of the studies and the ways in which it affects affects the CGRP peptide receptors, it is getting a little worrying from my end, because this just seems like another way that pharmaceutical companies are focused on making money, not so much focused on innovating with new medications for migraine sufferers or for people who have chronic pain conditions more generally. So I hope to be proven wrong. I hope these medications turn out to be very beneficial for most migraine sufferers, and I hope that there are a lot more medications on the way. But that being said, I will link this article in the show notes below, so make sure to check that out if you want more information. Now let's get to your migraine tip of the week. All right, this week's migraine tip of the week has to do with the supplement known as Feverfew. Feverfew has been used for a very, very long time to help treat headache conditions, and grows naturally throughout Europe. The dried leaves and sometimes the flowers and stems of the plant are made into various products, both capsules and liquid extracts if you go to a supplement store, but you can also find it in tea form as well if you want something to sip on while you're having a migraine. If you find maybe a hot liquid helps reduce some of the stress, or maybe your jaw tightness, for example. I know it helps me sometimes. So you can get it in tea form as well. And many doctors, both headache specialists, neurologists, and general practitioners, will recommend Feverfew if you ask them about supplements that you can take for your migraine, because of the very low risk associated with it, and because of its historical use for headaches. The most common side effect that has been reported is upset stomach or gut upset. So this could be a digestive problem. Maybe it's going to be a bathroom-related problem. Maybe it's going to be indigestion or gas. Something like that is going to be a very common side effect if you experience any of the side effects. Now, of course, if you're going to introduce any supplement into your migraine treatment, you are definitely going to want to talk it over with your doctor. You're going to want to have your doctor tell you what are some of the common things to look out for, like gut upset, but also what are some of the more extreme things to look out for. What are some things to be worried about if you start noticing it with your body as you take Feverfew? And this is kind of the thing that I wanted to highlight in regards to Feverfew. In general, as I said, Feverfew has been both widely used for headache and has very, very low risks associated with it. The problem is that unless you're growing a field in your backyard with Feverfew plants, you're going to be relying on either the supplement company, the tea company, or the whatever company to give you the Feverfew so that you can take it. And so the thing that came up a few years ago was that, as I said, the American Neurological Society had a list of approved supplements based on a ranking system similar to how they rank medications for migraine prevention and treatment. They had Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 supplements, and Feverfew was in Tier 1, the top tier, the most recommended. There were a couple others in there, but Feverfew was one of them, and so it was one of the most recommended medications. And so what happened was some of the suppliers in, I think it was Germany, were sending out supplements with not heavy metals in them, but enough trace elements with the Feverfew that if you took the supplement every day, those trace elements, I think they were heavy metals, would build up in your system and actually cause kidney and liver problems. And so the American Neurological Society pulled in its entirety their supplement recommendation guide, because supplements globally really aren't regulated like medications are, right? If you're in the United States, basically you can do almost whatever you want in a supplement, call it whatever you want, natural, magic pills or whatever. Not magic pills, of course, but you can put elaborate marketing on the packaging and sell people stuff that's largely unregulated, untested. It's unconfirmed whether or not the supplement is actually what you're getting, or if you're just getting, for example, cornstarch in a pill. And so because of these kind of considerations and the health considerations, the American Neurological Society pulled it in its entirety. Now, the good news is that if you have the people that were generally affected negatively by these contaminated Feverfew pills were people that had liver and kidney problems that were kind of pre-existing. And so if you were in general good health, you didn't really notice any negative side effects from the trace elements that were in the supplement. And so most people were going to be okay taking it. But because there was a small subset of the population that could be affected, they felt it was, their medical responsibility to pull the list until there was a way to get reliable and tested supplements to the population. And that's a governmental issue from country to country, right? You need something like an FDA to test supplements, and that's just something that the American Neurological Society can't force countries to do. So in order to be responsible, they had to stop recommending supplements because of these concerns. Now, the good thing is that there are good supplement companies out there. I don't have a list of my own, but Google is a good resource here, as are migraine support groups, where you can just ask other people what supplements they're using. Additionally, there are some websites that test supplements, and I will put some of those in the show notes below. Some of them are pay, yet you can pay like $5 or $10 a month to see their archives, and other ones are free. So I'll put that in the show notes below, because it's good not just for Feverfew, but supplements in general. If you're going to take them, you want to know that you're getting what you're paying for, and you're not getting anything you're not paying for. You don't want any trace amounts of heavy metals in your supplements, because those can be dangerous long term. So information on that will be in the show notes. That being said, let us move on now to our migraine question of the week. All right, so the migraine question of the week portion of the podcast does not always have to be a question. Sometimes it's a comment that's insightful, or a story from a fellow migraine sufferer who has a story to tell that we should all be paying attention to. And this week's question, as I said, isn't going to be a question. It comes from the YouTubes. We have a migraine sufferer named Spider McGavinport, at least that's his YouTube name, and I will link to his channel in the description below. He has a variety of different videos on there, ranging from his hobbies to his military past, but he has one video on there entitled Service-Connected Disability Migralepsy. And we've talked about migralepsy on the show a few times before, because Spider has reached out to me in the past to ask questions, to potentially do a collaboration together on a couple topics. And so we've talked about migralepsy because he introduced me to it and helped me understand it. And then I did some more research on my own based on some questions he had, and we did some more discussion on that stuff. So he's got a YouTube channel now, and as I said, there's a variety of videos on there, but the one entitled Service-Connected Disability Migralepsy is very insightful for someone who goes through migraines but has never had an epileptic seizure. And so to be able to see him, he's being extremely vulnerable here. He put together a series of videos showing him going through his migraleptic episodes, and so you can check that out if you want to see what it's like for someone who gets migraines and has epilepsy to get them. Because when you have migralepsy, though the name is a little bit debated right now in the scientific literature whether or not it's a helpful title, in general, people who have migralepsy experience migraines almost simultaneously with their seizures. So if you could imagine going through either of those things, that's terrible enough, but then having to put them together is extremely debilitating, makes your life extremely challenging. And Spider McGavinport's channel, his video is highlighting this, so you can check out that video. I will link to it below. It is very, very difficult to make online content in general, both because people, on the internet can be very, very critical and negative, but also because it tends to be a kind of vulnerable expression of what you're trying to do with your content, right? With the migraine guy stuff, right? People sometimes are real negative about it and say, I don't know anything, and yada, 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 but it's fine. You can brush those people off. But when you're putting something out there like a visibly physical issue that you face and then put it online, it can be very, very the possibilities are, I'm having trouble putting words together right now. The possibilities for the internet to be very negative are very, very high. So let's all watch this video for as long as we can, and at least in the comment section of the video, just put some nice words for Spider to let him know that you want him to continue to raise awareness, not only for migraines, but for his very specific condition known as migralepsy, and let him know that you support him, and that you'd like to see more content, hear more from him about what it's like to live with migraines and epilepsy, what it's like to be a ex-military, and to have to experience this now. The military his military experience is partially, if not entirely, the reason that he has this condition now also. And so you can ask more questions about that. And if you know someone who has migralepsy or is maybe in that area, or maybe they just get, one of the two, maybe just migraines or epilepsy, link them to Spider's video. That way they can see what a fellow migraine sufferer faces on a very daily basis. He's going to be hopefully getting interviewed on this podcast, so we'll get even more information out of him there. As you can imagine, trying to facilitate schedules and work around all of the things that we have to work around with our conditions makes it challenging, but one day soon we will get Spider on here. We are Facebook messaging as we speak, so look forward to that in the future. If you're not sure about migralepsy, what it is, how it is different than migraines and epilepsy independently of one another, you can check out a previous podcast we have on migralepsy, as well as a video outlining the basics of migralepsy on the Migraine Guy YouTube channel, so you can go check that out also. So big shout out to Spider for being willing and vulnerable to put this content out there, and that being said, let's get to the end of the show. All right, everyone, thank you for listening to this week's episode. We covered some good topics this week. I think we'll be going through supplements for a while, at least for the migraine tips of the week, because there's a lot of good supplements out there that we've mentioned in the past on the podcast. We've talked about some in depth, but I figure we might as well just go through an exhaustive list of maybe the top 5 or 10 supplements migraine sufferers should be at least thinking about using, discussing with their doctor in order to help reduce their migraine frequency and intensity. Big shout out again to all of the Patreon donors. If you want to become one, again, the website is patreon.com/themigraineguy. You can donate as little as $1 per month to the Migraine Guy, and every single dollar does help. Additionally, if you want to reach out to me on Facebook, you can do so, but if you need support, I have a migraine support group. You know, one of the biggest battles with chronic pain is isolation, especially if your significant other, your family, your friends, your work, your coworkers, if those people don't understand, misunderstand, or look down on you because you have a chronic pain condition, you can tend to isolate yourself. In addition to just what the pain does to you, it physically isolates you probably to your home, and then if you have emotional and isolation from your friends and family, it can be even worse. So that's the great part about the internet, is that we can break through those restrictions by being able to interact with each other in things like support groups. So head over to Facebook if you need a support group. Just search the Migraine Guy support group. I think we're at 12 or 1,300 members now, so we are kicking some butt, but we're a very active group. We people who post pretty often. People who respond are typically very kind, very sympathetic, and usually have very good insight. We have some people in the group, a lot of people actually, who have been suffering with migraines for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. So we have some real, quote unquote, old heads in the room, people who have been to, every kind of doctor, had every medication, and can answer a lot of questions. And we have a lot of people who have a lot of specific migraine conditions, not just general migraine, like the kind that I have, but very specific kinds. And so if you face that also, they can help you. And we also have moms, we have dads, we have sons, we have daughters, people who have specific ways in which their migraines affect their life. And so all of those resources are available to you if you need them. Just head over to Facebook, search the Migraine Guy support group, and we will add you. And as usual, the only reason that we do this, the only reason that we put out the podcast, do the YouTube, do all the social media stuff, is because we do not want any chronic pain sufferer, we don't want any migraine sufferer to feel that they're alone, because you are not alone.